authorities in Johannesburg say 62 bodies have been burnt beyond recognition following yesterday's deadly fire at a building in the CBD. Let's get more from SABC News reporter Hasina Gori, who's at the Diepkloof mortuary in Soweto, where the grim task of identifying loved ones has begun for many families. A very good afternoon to you, Hasina. I know that there must be many difficult scenes outside that mortuary. Just give us a sense of what's happening there.
Good afternoon, Nzinga. From this morning, we've been outside the Diepkloof Forensic Pathology Services as well as the Hillbrow mortuary, where the family and loved ones of those that perished in that fire yesterday have come to try and identify and collect the immortal remains of their loved ones. It's been quite a tedious process this morning. Many of those who we spoke to when we were here in the morning at about 8 o'clock, there was just one family outside this facility. At Hillbrow, we saw a contingent of various other families waiting there. We're back once again at Diepkloof. We've been briefed finally by some officials, and there's some clarity on the process going forward. One of the concerns this morning was that people did not know how exactly they were going to be able to identify. They didn't know where to go exactly. We've got some clarity also on the numbers of those that are in the facilities, and what we know right now is that there's 74 bodies that are in these two mortuaries that will all be brought to this facility here in Soweto, in Diepkloof. What we know as well is that there are 62 bodies that are completely unidentifiable, charred beyond recognition, burnt in that fire that engulfed that 5-story building in the inner city. But I want to bring in the Gauteng Health Department's head of communication. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Mr. Modiba. Let's start with the numbers that you explained to us, that clarity with regards to how many of the bodies are unidentifiable, and what does that mean for the process of identifying for those that are here today to come and collect the mortal remains of their loved ones?
Thank you. Look, at the time of giving an update yesterday, we had said that there are 74 bodies that are at the Forensic Pathology Services, and we said that there's also 4 body parts. And then at that time we had said that there are 10 bodies that are unidentifiable, which means they are bent beyond recognition. Obviously, the team was still processing because they were still receiving some of the bodies and so forth, and just going through each body. And they've been able to do that process overnight. And upon conclusion of that, they were able to then indicate that actually it's not just 10 bodies, it's actually 62 bodies that are bent beyond recognition, which means they are unidentifiable. You can't bring a family to say, come and view, identify if this is your loved one, which is our primary way of identifying a deceased loved one. So of those, only I think about 12 or so, 13 or so are identifiable, that families can be able to come and view those. The majority of the bodies, you can actually view them. What's going to happen for those 62 bodies that are unidentifiable is that currently there's a process that is underway of conducting DNA tests, which is driven by the South African Police Services, their Victim Empowerment Center, which is actually responsible for this initiative in terms of doing DNA tests. They are working closely with our Forensic Pathology Services colleagues. They are going through those bodies, and what's going to happen is that they take the DNA samples, they process them. Usually they process about 24 hours to 72 hours. But of course, it also will depend on other circumstances. It might take a bit longer, but we're hoping that it will stick within the time frame, because we know that many families would want to bury their loved ones and find closure. So we're going through that, and some of the bodies are still being processed at Hillbrow Forensic Pathology Services, Johannesburg Forensic Pathology Services in Hillbrow. They will be moved here at the Diepkloof Forensic Pathology Services. All the bodies will be stored here, so that families have got one central place that they are going to for processing. As you've already seen that some of the families would have started coming here. When they come here, part of what is happening is the counseling process, to take them through, to explain to them why it will be difficult for them to view their loved ones, and why they need to go through the process of DNA and so forth, so that we don't subject them to secondary trauma, where you end up burying the wrong person and then you have to come back again. But also the message we are sending out to families whose loved ones were in the building and they're not sure of their whereabouts. We have already given a hotline number from the Gauteng provincial government that will enable them to call that number to provide their details, and so that they can then, the team will go through, do a reference check through the list that they've already developed. We've got a list of people that are in hospitals and facilities who have been taken care of, who were admitted yesterday. We also have a list of the bodies that we have in the mortuary, in the forensic pathology services. Of course, because those that we can identify, they are given a particular number, a unique number to identify them, so that even during the DNA process, we're able to then match the sample of a particular person with the sample of a particular body that has been identified.
So I just want to get some clarity. So for the loved ones that are coming to identify their families that may have perished in the fire, they also have to go through that DNA process, and that's not being done here at this facility.
That particular process has been done here. The samples will be taken here at Diepkloof. At Hillbrow is just the process of that has been done by SAPS and our forensic pathology in terms of managing and processing the bodies there. We are diverting all families to come here at Diepkloof forensic pathology services just behind Bara, so that that process can take place here. They will also be provided with counseling and with further information to explain this process and why it's important to go through this particular process. We want to also allay fears from some families who might perhaps fear that we don't have the documentations and all of those things, our status in the country, suspect and so forth, that our primary concern now is to be able to identify the bodies and match them to a particular family to enable that family to go through their own burial rites. You would have seen that we have even people from the Muslim community, because they have a unique setup in terms of being able to bury quickly. We have engaged with them as well and advised them on the process that is unfolding, so that they are able to also talk to their constituency as well, in terms of saying there might be certain delays in terms of following the normal burial rites that they would go, and those delays are necessitated by the fact that we would not want to subject families through to secondary trauma because they've buried a wrong person, and therefore it's a delicate process, it's a sensitive process, because we're also dealing with grieving families.
Before I let you go, I just want to get one last. Can you give out the hotline number for those that may be watching or listening and wanting to get hold of you? Do you have the number that we could be able to allow, for those that may be wondering what is that hotline contact details and how can they get hold of the Gauteng department if their family members was in the building yesterday and they're part of the 74 that are still waiting to be buried?
Fortunately, I do have the number here. It's a 0800 203 886. 0800 203 886.
Thank you so much. That was the Gauteng Health, Mr. Modiba, speaking to us here outside the Diepkloof forensic pathology services, where families have begun gathering. Compared to this morning, there's a number of families that have now filled up this area. There's also going to be a prayer services that is going to be given. We'll bring you throughout the day. We're expected to hear from the MEC of Health as well, but also faith-based organizations, and hopefully speak to the families on how they're faring given this tragic incident that has ravished a building in the inner city of Johannesburg yesterday. But for now, Nzinga, it's back to you.